Deep within each heart there lies a magic spark that lights the fire of our imagination.
With us today is the international spokesperson for the Diabetes Research Foundation, and of course we know her very well, actress, singer, and celebrity Gloria Loring. Gloria, great to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. For 27 years, my son has had type 1 diabetes, which is caused usually early in life when the beta cells in the pancreas are destroyed and you don't have enough insulin. Type 2 diabetes has the same result. You don't have enough insulin for your needs, but it's most associated with obesity. People think, oh, well, I sort of have diabetes because I have type 2, and I don't need to test my blood sugar. I don't need to do the things that those other people with type 1 do. But the complications are the same. The blindness, the gangrene, the loss of limbs, the kidney failure, the heart.
You've been traveling the country, you've been doing a lot of fundraising and a lot of educating, public speaking, and talking about these issues. And what is the message that you're trying to get out there, Gloria?
The message is that people used to think that if you got diabetes, there was nothing you could do and you were preordained to have certain complications. It's not true. And especially for parents out there, for mothers and fathers who are feeding their children and feeding themselves, the whole family can make a difference.
Today on Health Corner, Gloria Loring is best known as one of the stars of Days of Our Lives. She's also a sensational singer, a music composer, and spokesperson for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. It must have been so scary to hear those words, "Your son has diabetes."
Yeah, it was very frightening because I knew nothing about diabetes. I didn't know what caused it. I didn't know how to treat it. But I did have a sense that it was very serious. And of course, there were a lot of tears, and there was worry, fear, some anger. Why my son? And that's why I named this book Moving Past the Fear.
Why do you think it's such a hard disease to manage?
The biggest part of diabetes is the psychological and emotional. The actual technical parts of taking care of ourselves, the doctor can give us, but it's that day-to-day commitment. There's never a vacation, there's never a day off. It's a world of suffering that diabetes can create, and it's not necessary. But let's fast forward now, and I have a little boy, and his name is Brennan, and he's 4.5 years old at that time. And he got diabetes, and I knew nothing about diabetes. I had no idea what it entailed, but when they told me, it almost made me faint. They said, well, he's going to have shots the rest of his life, and diabetes will probably shorten his life by 25 years, and he could go blind, and he could lose his legs, and and I'm going, I can't hear anymore. And one day he said to me, Mama, when are my shots going to be over? And I didn't have an answer for him. So I said, well, I don't know, but we're working on it. And then I realized that I had just made a promise that we were going to be working on it. And a year later, I auditioned for and got my very first acting job. I became Liz on Days of Our Lives. And I noticed in the dressing room that the actors were frequently trading recipes. And I had been asked for a recipe myself for a celebrity cookbook, and I thought, maybe I could do a celebrity cookbook to raise money for diabetes research. So now this is my favorite story of my whole life so far. I go into Days of Our Lives, and it's a Friday morning, and I've got my bag, I got my carry bag, and I've got my script and my makeup and a few things, shoes and stuff. And I put it down on the chair in my dressing room. And so I finish my scenes, and I rush back, and I get my costume off, and I put my stuff in the bag, and I pick that bag up, and underneath the bag is a little card that said, "Expect a miracle." And I picked it up, and I thought, well, where in the heck did this come from? Well, this isn't mine. And I went to throw it in the trash. And it was like some little voice inside said, don't throw away a card that says, "Expect a miracle." And I swear, I just couldn't let go of it, okay. So I just put it in my bag, and I took it with me to Houston because I was going to play tennis the next day in the Jack Benny Memorial Celebrity Tennis Classic for Juvenile Diabetes Research, right? So I get there, we play tennis all day with the patrons, and then that night there's a celebrity show, and I get up and I sing in the show. And as I'm coming down off the stairs, off the side of the stage, there's a gentleman waiting for me. And he looked familiar. And he said, "Gloria, do you remember me?" And I said, "Well, you look really familiar." And he said, "Ben Rogers from Beaumont, Texas." And I said, "Well, of course, I remember. I flew on your plane with you when we went to that Bob Hope golf thing a number of years ago." He said, "Yes." And we start talking, and a little voice in the back of my head said, "Tell him about the cookbook. tell them about the cookbook. And we're talking and we're talking. The boy says, tell them about the cookbook. All right, all right. Anyway. So now I finally say, he said, well, your son has diabetes. And I said, yes, he does. And he said, well, that's such a shame. I said, oh, but we're doing something good. I got this cookbook all ready to go. And I explained how everything was ready, but I had no money. And he said, well, how much do you need? And I said, $40,000 to print 50,000 copies. And he said, well, he says, darling girl, he said, I'll give you 10. Come on, let's go out in the lobby. I got some friends here, and this is Texas. So we went out in the lobby, and by the time I left there that night, I had $17,500. And it was like the door opened. And within the next 4 weeks, $42,500 was pledged to make this cookbook a reality. We printed the first 50,000 copies, we sold out. We printed the second 50,000, we sold out. 2 years later, I did another volume 2 of the Days of Our Lives Celebrity Cookbook. We sold out another 50,000 books. Over those 4 years, we raised $1 million for diabetes research. Now, when I look at what happened in my life, I see that certain steps came about. Number one, I had an impulse, and I detail this in my book. I had an impulse, and that impulse was to do something out of love, not out of fear, but out of love. Love expands. It's bigger and bigger. It increases our heart. It increases our sense of ourselves. So I had an impulse to do something out of love for my son, for something greater than myself, to be of service in some way. And then I set an intention. I want to create this cookbook and raise money for diabetes research. And then the next thing I did was I made an inventory. I thought of everybody I knew who I could talk to about that cookbook and tell them what I wanted to do, because somebody was just waiting to hear about it. I just didn't know who, so I just had to keep opening my mouth, and that was that little voice, tell them about the cookbook, you know, little prompting. And then the final thing was I had to go ahead and invest. I had to act as if it was going to be a reality. I was told, I'm telling you, by so many people, you can't do that. You can't do a cookbook. You have to have a publishing company. You have to have a marketing company. You have to have licensed nutritionists and dietitians test all those recipes. I did it in my own kitchen. You know, I just went ahead and I said, I don't have that. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to believe it's going to happen. And it happened. Did you know that when you're having surgery, being treated for a disease, or even having a baby, there's extra human tissue that's just thrown away? And yet scientists need that tissue to develop treatments for some of today's most deadly diseases. You have the power to make a difference by donating your tissue for research. I'm playing for the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation.
So far, you have raised over $1 million for juvenile diabetes.
Yes.
Good for you. Let's add to that.
Right.
You're right, it's 10 o'clock.
Oh my God!
Gloria, you just ran the table.
That was fabulous!
Coming up live on The View. From songwriter to soap star to a mom helping her son live with diabetes, Gloria Loring is revealing the fear and the facts behind a disease that millions of people don't even know they have.
From songwriter to soap star, Gloria Loring knows how to captivate an audience in her enlightening new book, Living with Type 2 Diabetes Just May Save Your Life.
Doctors say that diabetes is one of the oldest diseases known to man.
Yes, it is.
Now, what causes it? Can you help us understand that?
Well, from what we know, there are two mechanisms. They both result in the same end result, which is higher than normal blood sugar. Your blood sugar should be between 80 and 120. But with type 1, the cells that produce the insulin in your body actually get destroyed. Enough of them get destroyed that suddenly you don't have enough insulin. Mm-hmm. Type 2, your body may be producing insulin, but it could be because of weight gain and other factors. It's not enough insulin for you.
Treatments?
There are lots of treatments there. Well, the first and most important is use the body appropriately. Be at normal weight if you can, or get as close. Exercise, you know, increase your metabolism. Then there's medication if you're type 2. They're very good medications. Type 1, there is the insulin.
Right.
And you have to take it by injection, although there is a new inhaled insulin that is now being used.
It's all such helpful information. information,
a lot.
especially for people with kids. You have a new CD called.
Well, I have a CD out, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the song on it, I Always Will. You wrote that for your son, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Could you sing a little bit for us?
I would. When Brennan was turning 21, I wanted to give him something that nobody but his mom could give him. And, you know, kids have lots of things, so I wrote him this song. In the way that the fragrance clings to a flower, in the way that a minute is held in an hour, in the same way my heart understands what is true. Nothing is closer to me than you. And for all my life, and for longer still, I'm gonna be with you. I always will. And in every dream that your years fulfill, I'm gonna be with you. I always will.